right. Let's end the show with a little salt.
Yes,
as I like
please.
to do.
Please.
So, look, oftentimes when we hear about businesses or schools prematurely opening in the United States amid the coronavirus pandemic, where, let me remind you, we are seeing a surge of active coronavirus cases throughout the country, we think of like Republicans, right? I think that that's the narrative that we've seen in the mainstream press. Oh, here's a GOP lawmaker. Oh, look how callous he is. They want to reopen schools. It's so dangerous for teachers. And to be clear, teachers' unions do not want to open because it's premature and we have not handled coronavirus appropriately. But there are some people on, I don't want to say the left, but some Democrats, some mainstream Democrats who are very open about their support of reopening schools. One of them is a reporter with the New York Times. She is the person who started the 1619 Project at the New York Times. And so Nicole Hannah-Jones tweeted the following: "The discussion has grown completely hyperbolic to the point that it's virtually impossible to have on here. People are going to work every day in this city. To act as if it's immoral to even have the conversation of how to open schools with a 1% infection rate is just..." And so she's minimizing the infection rate, but when you consider that 1% of a densely populated city, for instance, is a high number of people, like, you can understand why that's a callous statement. And again, we have not really handled this virus appropriately. That's why we're seeing these surges throughout the country. And by the way, this is still the first wave. We haven't handled the first wave of coronavirus. There's a second wave expected to come in the fall. So understandably, teachers' unions are like, no, kids don't live in a vacuum. We'd have to educate them. And that puts our lives at risk. It puts our families' lives at risk. And there is some newer reporting, newer data indicating that some children really do suffer serious consequences from this virus. One of the more recent studies showed that some students develop neurological problems as a result of this virus. So we really need to understand what we're dealing with and maybe not make these types of callous statements. Now, it's one thing to hear a New York Times reporter say something like that, but it's a completely different thing to hear Democratic leadership make similar arguments. And here's Chuck Schumer doing exactly that.
What is one of the biggest problems facing us in the next month, as the speaker mentioned? Schools. Opening up the schools safely. If you don't open up the schools, you're going to hurt the economy significantly because lots of people can't go to work.
So, Nando, that's really what's at play beneath the surface. Schumer said it out loud, you know, we just want to open the schools so we can free up these people. We got to free up the human capital.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got to unleash the power of human capital. Yes.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. You know, there is, again, it's one of those issues where we're seeing a confluence between the right and the liberal kind of spectrum of our politics. The Democratic leadership, the most influential liberal intellectual right now probably is Nicole Hannah-Jones. She's on board. The conservatives are on board, so that means it's probably going to happen unless there is this wave of teacher strikes, which has kind of been starting. You know, like the Chicago teachers went on strike, and within hours they reversed their position on whether they're going to reopen the schools or not. You know, just shows that strikes work, that labor militancy is the way to get the goods. But yeah, I mean, it is really terrifying to see, just again, you know, our opposition party just completely laying down at the feet of the party in power, the right-wing party in power. I mean, they love to do that. It's their favorite thing to do. They do not do anything to oppose these people in any meaningful way. I mean, it is just absolute malpractice. I mean, we've seen that our nation is just not capable of dealing with the most basic civil society functions to control this pandemic. And to just reopen the schools, millions of kids who, I mean, it's not just the kids who could get sick. I mean, they could transmit it to their parents. You know, it's going to cause like a chaos that's unimaginable. I mean, we are just not equipped to do it. You know, so instead of us like re-advocating to reopen the schools, like we need more relief for people to stay home. Like that's what we need. We need relief for people to stay home. Mm-hmm. We can do it. It's just they don't want to do it. Like you said,
they don't want to do it. No.
Unleash the power of human capital. to go back to work. It's disgusting.
Yeah, it is disgusting. And that economic relief is something that Congress is obviously unwilling to really provide. I mean, enough relief for people to safely and comfortably stay home.
Yeah.
And even the head of the Minneapolis Federal Reserve recently said, if all you care about is the economy, right? You don't care about the human lives, but you want the economy to rebound. The best way to do it is to shut everything down, not like in a half-assed way like we did, a few months ago, but to really shut things down. That's the only way you're going to slow the spread of this infection, of this virus, and then you got to do the contact tracing.
Yeah.
But the New York Times of all places recently published this piece that compared the United States to pretty much every other affluent country. And really, we are in a uniquely terrible position to deal with a pandemic, because what's been drilled in people's heads over and over again is that what makes this country great is individualism, right? And so people think that any type of collective effort is some sort of terrible, dystopian violation of their rights. So you can't get people on the same page. And then on top of it, of course, we have this whole healthcare system that functions under a profit motive. We don't have enough hospital beds, and that's not an accident. We don't have enough hospital beds because, private hospitals have done the cost-benefit analysis and decided, hey, why are we going to have empty hospital beds? We got to make sure we have the exact number of beds that are constantly full. So that's what we're dealing with.
And I think it's very tempting, and it's obviously that Trump has been horrible in his response to the coronavirus. I mean, there's no way getting around it. But I just think that the deeper institutional structures of this country are also just incapable of dealing with something like this, even if Barack Obama was in power, or Hillary Clinton, or Joe Biden. The structures of civil society to deal with something like this have been decimated with decades of neoliberalism and austerity, that even if someone was kind of imagine just a more competent person at the helm, it would still be an absolute nightmare to coordinate the entire response to the pandemic. And it's just, again, this is like a matter of life or death. This is not something to mess around with. So the quote unquote trade-offs are absolutely horrifying. It's insane that people are talking about reopening schools. We're just nowhere near there. It's not even close.
We're not ready. No. By the way, the State Department had released a travel advisory for Americans who were thinking about traveling to New Zealand. They're like, it might be dangerous. Yeah, we have literally 2.2 million active cases of coronavirus in the United States. You want to know how many New Zealand has?
This is 12 or
23.
Something. Yeah.
23. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Great travel advisory you have there. And, some might be wondering, well, okay, the CDC has issued guidelines, which, by the way, were interfered with by the Trump administration and revised. But okay, there are guidelines. Maybe we can open schools safely. Except let's take a look at what recently happened in Georgia. 2 students had shared images on social media of what their high school looked like. As you can see, the vast majority of students are not wearing masks. They are certainly not social distancing. That hallway is just jam-packed with students. And the school responded by suspending the 2 students who had posted on social media. One of them, Hannah Waters, did identify herself. And after a significant amount of backlash, the school decided to reverse the suspension. So they'll be going back to school on Monday. But the issue here isn't what the students did. Actually, what the students did was fantastic, because it gives you some evidence to how difficult it really is going to be to socially distance, and maybe opening up schools prematurely is a terrible, terrible idea. But at the same time, the real problem here is that, again, we haven't really grappled with this virus effectively, and we need to do that before we have any conversations about reopening schools. And look, for the parents out there who are stuck at home with your kids, I get it. It's frustrating. It's difficult, but you don't want to get sick.
You don't want to get sick.
And you don't. And you don't know how coronavirus is going to impact you. I think a lot of people have this false sense of security, but there are plenty of people who are young, healthy, and they've been impacted by this virus in ways they did not expect. So we need to be cognizant of that.
Yeah, and did you see that article in The Atlantic this week? I mean, Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor of The Atlantic, who was just a heinous human being, was very proud of it. But it was basically they got some nurse to write a piece saying teachers should just do their jobs like I did. I mean, first of all, like I suspect we'll figure out there's something deeper going on with the commissioning of that article. Like, I mean, what did they just put up like an open casting call for like we need one turncoat nurse to, just completely blow up solidarity with teachers unions here. Or if there was someone, there's probably something deeper going on. But regardless,
Even
it's just
if
an
there
insane
isn't.
piece to commission, an insane piece to publish. Like just some random nurse saying like, oh, teachers, you think you're a bunch of snowflakes. Like I put my life online. It's like, that's not like
You're a nurse. It's your
you're a
job.
nurse.
It's literally your job to deal with sick people. Like that's what you signed up for.
Not
Teachers
just that,
are
but like if the
underpaid,
teachers
undervalued. They're not trained. They didn't sign up for a job where they would have to like constantly defend their life against a virus that is killing a lot of Americans right now. So, I mean, even if there's nothing shady behind like the commission of that article, the logic just isn't there. And so,
the
go
teachers
ahead.
coming back to school is going to make this nurse's job impossible. Like it's going to overwhelm
That's
the
a good
healthcare
point.
system and more, like there's not enough nurses. They're going to get sick. Like it's insane. It's insane on so many levels. And it was just like one of the, like you can only see this thing in the American press. Like the bastion of liberal intelligence of The Atlantic just publishes this absolutely grotesque piece. I mean, it's just, it made me angry to no end.